Welcome back to Behind the Rise. I'm your host, Spencer McPartland, and today's guest is Richard Blade. He doesn't need much of an introduction. He has a Hollywood Star Walk of Fame. He has written 7 books, and obviously having a 40 plus year career over music and television, in addition to being the host of SiriusXM's First Slave. So, Richard, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day, I'm sure.
Thank you, Spencer, for having me on. I appreciate it.
So my first question is gonna go back a little bit to your DJing days. So how did you land your 2 gigs with Michael Jackson and Barbara Streisand? And also, how did that happen? But also, how did that make you feel about the events, but also about yourself as a DJ, if you will?
The Barbara Streisand one came first, and that really was a huge turning point for me in my DJing career as a mobile DJ, particularly because I'd been doing a number of gigs, and I'd worked with a party planner called the Movable Feast. She'd do all the catering and party supplies and tables and tablecloths and things like that. And she said, I've got a client who is got a bar mitzvah coming up. And I had no clue what a bar mitzvah was at the time. I came from a small town in England that didn't have a large Jewish community, but I figured I'd worked in a lot of bars, so I would be okay. So I could make it work. I had no clue. It was a kind of coming of age religious ceremony. And she said, the client wants to meet you. Let's caravan out to her place in Malibu. And so I had she didn't tell me who it was, and I followed her car, and we went to Paradise Cove and then went up into the hills behind it, Paradise Cove being a beautiful beach. And there was a compound, gated compound of 3 homes that the client had bought over the years. She'd bought one there and then bought the other 2 to have privacy. And then we pulled up, and she said, here she comes. And Barbara Streisand walks out and goes, hello, I'm Barbara. And I went, hi, I'm Richard. And at the time, I was really into disco.
Okay.
I knew who Barbara Streisand was, obviously one of the most famous singers in the world. But if it had been Anita Ward or Donna Summer, I'd have been a lot more impressed. But but maybe she liked the fact that I wasn't like. And I said, great, tell me about it. And she said, it's my son Jason's bar mitzvah, and I'd like you to do it. And it's going to be about 500 people here. And I said, absolutely no problem. And she said, what do you need? And I said, well, no, I'll bring everything. I'll bring the lights and the sound, and I'll make sure it works for you, and any special music you want. She said, no, just the appropriate for a bar mitzvah. And I'm thinking, what would be appropriate? And so I had to look it up. We didn't have the internet at the time,
Right.
I had to ask my friends, and bar mitzvah is Jewish, So I had Hava Nagila and all the horrors and sunrise, sunset, and it proved to be an incredible party, and it was fantastic. And everyone was there. She'd just done a duet with Neil Diamond, and
Okay.
that you don't bring me flowers. And so he was there, and Donna Summer actually was there because all the recording community was there, and Larry Hagman was there, and he invited me to do a rap party for his new show he was doing called Dallas. And so suddenly I was doing all these celebrity clients, and plus the bar mitzvah went so well. And Jason Gould was the oldest kid in his class. And so all the moms who were having their kids be bar mitzvahed wanted Barbara Streisand's DJ. So I was booked like crazy. And then suddenly I'm doing bat mitzvahs as well. I had to look that up. What's a bat mitzvah? And so things went really well. And then because I was doing so many things for record companies, I was doing it for CBS and for Warner Brothers because they'd all been there, in Casablanca Records for Donna Summer. I got approached by Epic Records for the Destiny tour, because the Victory tour came later. The Destiny tour for the Jacksons, because they'd just gone to Epic. And the Jacksons was with an S that looked like the 5, so they could get away looking like the Jackson 5, but Motown owned that name. And so Michael Jackson obviously was there, and we were all locked in a bank vault that was going to be opened, and the Jacksons would dance out, and I'd have my fog machine going and the music going, and shake your body down to the ground. And Michael liked it so much, he said, would you do some parties at my house in Encino? And so I went to the house in Havenhurst a number of times and DJ'd for him, and he was always great. And I met a number of people at the parties he had, including one of my heroes in life, Sean Connery. Oh, gosh,
Oh yeah,
that was fantastic. I went up to Sean Connery and I said, when I was a kid, I used to go to school with a wet underarm because of you. And he goes, now, why would you possibly have a wet underarm because of me? And I said, because I had a 007 shoulder holster water pistol Of
Right.
course, in these days, if you went to school with a water pistol, you would be expelled, because it looked too much like a real gun. But back then, it was an innocent time. And he laughed and he said, "I used to collect all of the 007 paraphernalia myself." But that was great. So that was how I got linked up with Barbra Streisand and Michael Jackson.
Now, how did it make you feel about yourself as a DJ getting these massive gigs with, larger than life people, if you wanna call it that? Like, people that the audience would look up to and you'd be like, "Wow, you really got that gig," if you will.
Well, I've always been a fanboy myself, so it was quite something. I try to hold it back. I don't kind of go, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, "Oh, God, I'm this little kid from this little town. How am I possibly with these people that are so huge?" But it made me feel great. But it also made me want to make sure that I gave them the best DJ show possible. And so I would always step up my game and make sure that I was playing the right music for them, that the dance floor was always full. And that way I was kind of treating them just like I would treat anyone,
Right.
because if you go and DJ a party and people aren't dancing, you're not doing a good job. So it doesn't matter if it's Larry Hagman celebrating the rap party for season 1 of Dallas, or Michael Jackson throwing a party for his brothers and his sisters. You've got to make sure that everyone's having a good time.
Now, my next question is, so you didn't play obviously all you how do I phrase it? You played all the music, but you knew also some of the people, that were playing the music. Obviously, Duran Duran is big. Well, I mean,
Depeche,
obviously,
Depeche
Depeche
Mode.
Mode, U2 are obviously super big that everybody knows, and then I think Elvis Costello, but then, of course, your relation is with Simple Minds because they came over from Glasgow to
Hmm.
America, and you came over from Britain to America, so you have this little bit of a relationship, if you will. How does that happen, but how does it also feel to know these people that you've looked up to, whether it's the people in the '80s or just in general?
It feels great, because I've always tried to maintain not only a professional level with these bands, but if we became friends, not to take advantage of the
Right.
friendship, because you don't want to do that. And quite often when we're talking, when I'm hanging out with them, we're not talking about anything to do with their music or my radio career. We're talking about anything but. Just regular conversations. Oh my God, did you see what so and so said in the press the other day? Or the Knicks just won, that kind of thing.
Right.
And I think that's why I've had an open friendship with so many of these bands, because they know that they're not going to get the same questions always. Oh, how did you get your name? Or anything like that. It's a completely different relationship. So, for example, Billy Idol is
Right.
getting his hands in the concrete
Okay.
outside of Guitar Center in their Walk of Fame this coming Tuesday. And he called me up 2 days ago and said, "Hey, would you come on down, because Steve and I are going to be getting our hands in the concrete, and
Okay.
would you introduce us, and we can go out for dinner afterwards?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'm there." Because when I got my start, Billy came down and
Right.
he was one of the people who introduced me. So it's just one of those things. And I feel very fortunate, because there is always that moment when you go, "Hey, it's Billy Idol I'm eating dinner with." But maybe he sometimes goes, "That's Richard Blade." But it's just a friendly thing. But I don't take it for granted. In the back of my mind, I feel very fortunate to know these people on a personal basis.
And kind of the same thing with, I know that you've talked to before about with Boy George, where you interviewed him for I think it was like 4+ hours during Zoom or
Yeah.
perspectives or certain different questions, if you will.
Yeah, it's nice to find out about his family, etc., and their reactions to him, because they've had to go through a number of different things with Boy George. Obviously, he was openly gay in the early days, and because of his family being coming from that English time, if you were born in the 30s, which his parents were, that was an incredibly conservative time for Britain. And so for his parents to be able to adjust to Boy George being openly gay had to be quite something. I can't imagine what my parents would have gone through if I'd have been gay and had to tell them that. Obviously, I didn't have to, but I put myself in Boy George's shoes and thought, wow. And we chatted about that, and we chatted also about how he was able to go back to them and they were able to help him during his drug problems. And we just went through that. And, Boy asked me what it was like for me coming over here and getting my green card in the early days. And we went all through those conversations. So it's kind of cool, because you're leaning on someone else, because they're asking you about something, because they're thinking in the back of their mind, God, I had problems. How did he deal with his?
It's kind of like that two-way street, if you will.
Yeah, it's kind of like a friend, you know. That's the whole thing, to try and make it just two human beings talking.
Now, what was it like being at Live Aid? Like, obviously, it was like a large amount of people. What was it like? Was it obviously? I'm sure it was exciting, but was it kind of nerve-wracking when you have to get up in front of this, like the size of Wembley or a little bit smaller?
Yeah, Live A was nerve-wracking because I was doing a TV show called Video One, and MTV and ABC had all the rights to shoot there. Nobody else. There was a backstage area which was tented for the journalists, and that's where I was meant to be. But it was John Taylor from Duran Duran who said, "No, I want you to come on stage and shoot us because I'm going on twice." He went once as Power Station and then, of course, with Duran. And so we were able to shoot it, and we shouldn't have been able to shoot it because we didn't have the rights. At one point, Bill Graham, the promoter, who was because he's no longer with us, notoriously in your face. He told me to get the fuck off his stage or he'd break that camera off my over my back. And we thought we were done. And then it was John Taylor who said, "No, I want you to come back on." And the stage, because it was so big, we stayed deliberately on one side of the stage away from Bill Graham because I didn't want to get my back broken by that camera.
Now, what is it like to? I know you've talked about it before, but what was your relationship like with Richard Branson? Because I know before you've talked about your Mini Cooper story and how he picked you up and you didn't know anything. I mean, you didn't really know who he was. You all you saw, I'm sure, was the beard and the blonde hair in the car picking you up, just taking you to pick up your equipment. How is that? What was that like? And how did you? I guess if you want to take it from the audience perspective, watch Virgin blow up. But now, how is that relationship, if you will, sustained over the course of the years and also currently?
Well, we never really sustained that relationship. I was a hitchhiker, hitching down from Oxford to London to buy some DJ gear. And he was up there trying to buy a small farmhouse that he could convert into a studio, which became the Manor, where Roxy Music recorded, where Mike Oldfield recorded, where so many bands recorded. But he didn't have the beard or anything. He was just a young guy. Our 2 hours in the car together was really fun because the both had the same interests in music, and we were just bouncing back and forth, almost like a tennis match. How about this one? Do you like that? And I knew obviously about Virgin Records in London, but it was a tiny store. It was so small. It was like my buddy has a store in Covina called
Okay.
Chaos Records. It was like that. It was nothing. He was taking a huge gamble, borrowing money to try and buy this farmhouse. He couldn't afford to buy anything in London. It was too expensive. So he was going up to Oxford and then past Oxford into the farming country to buy an old farmhouse there, which had some rooms where he thought bands could stay and come in and record for 3 or 4 days and get an album done. And he just couldn't afford anything in London. And understandably, now he could buy London because
Right.
he's a billionaire. But we had a great time. And then I obviously watched him explode and how his Virgin Records took off, and then Virgin Cruises and Virgin Bride and everything he did, Virgin Trains. And so when I met him again 35 years later, he was doing Loveline, and I went in and I waited for a break, and he came on out, and I told him the story, and he goes, "I remember picking you up." He said, "I don't remember you, but I remember had to tell someone I thought I'd found what became the Manor." And I remember picking up that hitchhiker, and he goes, "I'm so happy it was you." And when we chatted, and then we got great photos, and he picked up my wife, and then he was full on Richard Branson with the longer hair and the beard and the 9-digit bank account. And he held her in his arms, and I thought, how great! This is someone who really does deserve his success, and he looks after his employees. You hear these nightmare stories of billionaires who don't care about their employees. He loved his employees. And I heard from they were stewardesses at the time. Now, of course, it's flight attendants. They would say that when he was on the plane afterwards, he would take everyone out for dinner and just look after them. And he was just the nicest guy to work for.
I There's an interview that he did where he it was after he dropped out of school, and it was before Virgin, where he had Student Magazine, and I don't know how this happened, but he interviewed Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones, and this was in the early '60s, where he could just walk up to him and he just interviewed him in his house, and I was like, Wow.
He wrote a great autobiography. I actually have it right here. It's one of my favorite autobiographies, and I recommend it to anyone. Losing My Virginity from Richard Branson, and it is really a good autobiography. I read that when I was writing mine. World in my eyes to see if I could get any tips of how to stage a good autobiography because his was one that I couldn't put down.
So you've obviously sustained the relationship. I take it. It's stayed either calm or whatever it is, if you will.
Well, not really, because I've only met him twice.
Right.
And but both times it was a great interaction, and I have nothing but respect for the gentleman.
Now, as you were saying earlier, you and Billy Idol have this close knit relationship, if you will, because you were just saying that on Tuesday he's gonna get his handprints in the concrete. And I'm sure a lot of people want to know: are you gonna be the person on stage who inducts him into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or do we not know?
I don't know. I mean, if he said, I would think he would get someone a lot bigger than me to do it. If he asked me, I would be there in yesterday for
Okay.
him because he and Steve Stevens so deserve it. And I think that when they perform live, because they will be performing live, I think they're going to put on a set that is going to be one for the ages because Billy is one of those performers who never phones it in. He is there 100%. He is just focused on delivering a great show for whatever audience it is. If it's Cruel World, it's for them. If it's his residency in Vegas, it's for them. For the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's going to be one for the ages, I think.
Kind of like how he does it with all of his concerts or the his recent AMA performance.
Yeah, he's terrific.
So, was there a moment that you thought that the music wasn't going to sustain, where it was going to be popular in the moment, but then it wasn't? People were going to lose interest in it, and how did you have the foresight to say that this is something that it interests me, and that I think a lot of people are still going to want to listen to the music 40 or whatever, however
Yeah,
many years later on.
yeah, when it was happening in the 80s, I honestly didn't think it was going to sustain. I thought it was going to be, and I actually asked Howard Jones about this one time. Did you think your music was going to be disposable pop? And he went, nobody's ever asked me that before. And he had the same reaction as me. He was trying to do the best he could, but he didn't know if it was going to last. And I had no idea. I thought Duran would be here and gone. I thought even Depeche would be here and gone. And then the 90s started, and I heard bands like Creed and Hoobastank and Live, and I
Yeah.
went, this is not as good as the 80s. There were some good bands, obviously Nirvana and Pearl Jam and some of Soundgarden. No, I've never been a fan of Soundgarden myself personally, but a lot of people love it. But that's when I thought, God, the 80s was so much better because it was an uplifting, fun time for music. It wasn't dark, it wasn't drab, it wasn't plaid shirts and dirty jeans and people just looking grungy. So that's when I came up with the idea for the flashback lunch that the 80s should stay through the 90s. And I put that on the radio, and was number one time slot. I mean, it just blew up, and we even did flashback weekends, even though K Rock at the time in Los Angeles was hating 80s. The program director who came in did not like the 80s. He wanted all 90s, but the audience loved the 80s and wouldn't let it go. And then as the 2000s rolled around, slowly the 80s started to really build. And by 2008, I would say, the 80s were back and here to stay. And when I'm doing, my live concerts, tours, like the one coming up with Howard Jones, things
Right.
can only get better. I don't DJ. I go out and tell stories and interact with the audience. And I talk about that and say how there's 2 decades I think will always stay around. And that's the 60s because of the Beatles and the
Right.
Who and the Doors and the Beach Boys and the Stones, of course, and the 80s. I think those 2 decades resonate with everyone. Kids come up to me at gigs who are 14 years old, and I'm expecting them to ask me for Taylor Swift and DJ Khalid, and instead they ask for Aha and Kate Bush. So it's great.
Now, how does it feel to be on Sirius XM? Obviously, working in K Rock for 14 years, but how does it feel going from K Rock to working on Sirius XM, and the audience, I guess, if you will, I'm presuming, gives you a little bit of input for what they want to hear on a day to day basis, whether it's Duran Duran or Elvis Costello or the Cars or NXS or anything else. of that nature, if you will.
Back in the day, in the 80s, K-Rock was so exciting for me because we were number one in Southern California. We had a huge listening audience. And Raymond and I, as Ramondo and the Blade, did the morning show. And we used to joke that if we sneezed on the air for the rest of the day, anywhere we went, if we went to Vaughn's or Albertsons or Rolf's or the equivalent of Trader Joe's today, people would come up to you and go, "Bless you," because everyone had heard it. And when I started with Sirius, it was new. Satellite radio was new. You had to explain what it was, and there was very few listeners. We only had 235,000 subscribers total when I first started in 2003. Now we've got 36 million, and I know biggest radio in the world is, and that doesn't count the app, and the app is massive now. But I didn't know how it would be when I went out on a national tour. I'd never done a national tour until a year ago in February. I went out with Howard Jones, ABC, and me, and I didn't want to DJ. I wanted to do something different. It was too easy for me to stand behind a console and just hit play. I didn't want to do that. And I knew that Martin Fry and Howard would be bringing their A game. So I thought, I'm going to do something special. So I did a history of new wave music using little audio drops when we had video screens using video.
Right.
But I was walking the stage and interacting with the audience. What do you think about this? And who do you think it was? And people loved it. And I thought, okay, I know it's going to work in Southern California because people grew up with me there.
Right.
But what's it going to be like around the rest of the country? And it worked everywhere. Everyone came up and was so into it, and they were listening. They were there because of Sirius XM. And I would play a tiny venue in February, snow everywhere in South Dakota. And I thought, this is going to be tough. It wasn't. It was fantastic. And so when I went out a second time with Howard, but this time with Haircut 100 in September of last year, I thought, I can't do the same set. I have to do something completely different because a lot of the same people will be coming back. And so I put together a new set, and they loved that. And so now I've got a third set, which I'm going to be doing. And this one's not a history of new wave, but it's a history of music evolving through the 80s. It starts with 1980 and finishes with 1990. And basically the crowd are going to have to work out what 5 songs were the biggest of each year. And I'm going to be talking about it and then playing a clip from each song. And I know there's going to be that moment of, yeah, I've forgotten about, oh my God. And I tried it out here at the house with a few people as they've come over, like it's live, and they have loved it. So I'm excited to do that. So for me, it's really fun because the reach of Sirius XM is not local. It's not Southern California. It's national and international because I spend a lot of time in the winter in Mexico. I have a place in Sayulita, and a number of the restaurants, people don't know I'm Richard Blade down there. They don't, I'm just this little surfer guy who goes out, but a lot of the restaurants are listening to Sirius XM on the app down there. And the most listened to station down there, First Wave, because they're listening. And the second is Big 80s. I have to give them credit as well because the 80s crosses over to so many people, and the locals love it, and the tourists, of course, relate to it because it's either Madonna or it's Depeche Mode, depending whether it's Big 80s or First Wave.
So what was it like getting your star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame? I know towards the beginning you said that Billy Idol showed up at your speech. I think that there was might have been, I think it was Robert Smith maybe, and I think it might have been Dave Gahan. There's somebody, I don't know who it was, but there's a few people that showed up. Obviously, Billy Idol was big. What was it like? Were you nervous as you were during Live Aid, or were you kind of like, this is an honor, and let's just go through it and see how the crowd reacts to me getting this award, if you will?
Well, first up, I had no idea I was going to get the star. And when I got the phone call on my phone, I didn't recognize the number. And I thought it was spam coming in. And I was in the kitchen with the wife, so I answered on speaker, and I went, "Hello, can I help you?" And this woman's voice goes, "Yes. Are you excited, Richard?" My wife looks at me and goes, "My God, what is this? Some kind of porn?" And I went, "Why would I be excited?" And the woman said, "This is Anna Martinez from the Hollywood Walk of Fame. You've just been awarded a star." And I went, "What?" And I looked at my wife, and I swear to God, she levitated. She was like, "Whoa!" like floating. It was quite a moment. So I was blown away by it. And you're frozen, by the way, at the moment.
Oh, I am.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Because your
I can
feed
hear
is
you.
frozen.
I can hear you.
Not sure. Yeah, internet connection unstable. It says. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Hey, there you go.
I
You okay?
Yeah, I don't
You're
know what
still
happened.
frozen there.
I can see and hear you. I don't know what happened.
You are still frozen, Spencer. I don't know. So there you go. Sorry about that.
No, it's good. These things happen.
So we were talking about the Hollywood star. You want me to pick up there?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. So my wife was so excited when we found out I was going to get the star, and then I wanted a couple of people to speak, and the first person I reached out to was Jimmy Kimmel
Okay.
because I'd worked with Jimmy at K Rock for 5 years, and Jimmy said right away, "I'll do it." I was like, "Wow, okay, fantastic," and we had to move the time though, 30 minutes earlier because of his rehearsal. He goes in at 11:30 at the El Capitan to rehearse for the evening show. And so the schedule was going to start at 11, but instead we started at 10:30 so he could leave. That was the only consideration. And then I reached out to Billy and Billy said yes. And I was like, wow, that is awesome. So they both came down and spoke. And then Dave Wakeland from the English Beat said, could he come? And Johnny Batos from Oingo Boingo and John Easdale from Dramarama and a bunch of people from K Rock came as well. And so it was a lovely, lovely time. And I wasn't really nervous. I was just excited about it. I was just blown away and excited. So there was one of those things. And the one thing I asked for the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce was it to be on June 6th because I'm a big World War II buff, and it was the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
Okay.
So they said, okay. And that's how I started because my hometown, Torquay, was where the 101st loaded onto their landing craft, went out to the main ships, and then landing craft were loaded on there and then sailed across the channel. And so to be able to do that and to be able to mention them meant a lot to me because if it hadn't been for D-Day, then I would have been accepting the Star and the Walk of Fame in German.
Hey.
So, yeah.
Now, when was the last time that you experienced awe, if you will?
Experience what?
Awe? Like good. Yeah.
Oh, on a regular basis, I'm always in awe. I'm in awe of a beautiful sunset. I'm in awe of a gorgeous little dog. I'm not someone who takes life for granted. I believe I'm every day I wake up and think I'm so lucky to be on this planet because it's such a gorgeous planet. And unfortunately, I think so many people don't understand how beautiful this world is. I'm looking at the background you have of the Golden Gate Bridge and sunset there, and we should all take a moment every day and think how fortunate we are to be on this planet and not to take it for granted, because if we screw it up, planet will come back in 50 million years, 100 million years, but we won't. So we've got to be really careful with our environment and with our oceans and with our air, because if we don't, it's the only planet we got. We're on a rock hurtling through space. And it's great that Elon Musk wants to set up a city on Mars, but we're 20,000 years away from being able to inhabit that because we'd have to terraform the whole planet. It's going to take a long time.
Richard, I appreciate you taking the time and sharing the perspective behind a career like this. This has been episode 36 of Behind the Rise. If you found value in this conversation, make sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. We will see you next time.